and we would go to dinner. And just an example, we were driving to dinner, and he would call people. He had a car phone before cell phones, and he calls Bill Parcells, and he'd chat, and he says to Bill, well, Bill, how are you able to keep Lawrence Taylor off of drugs? And Bill goes, well, can I talk? Meaning there's no one else. And Al goes, yeah, sure. And he kind of nods at me. He says, why? He knows he's going to have to pee in a cup every day. And Al goes, well, is that legal? And Bill goes, and I'll clean it up. He goes, I don't care if it's legal or not. He knows he has to pee in that cup. That's how I'm keeping him clean. So those were little stories that really weren't public that I was privy to and able to be witness of.
John, one of the things that I do know, sitting here in San Francisco and through the Al Davis era, was the fact that he did have some run-ins with some of his players. And I'm just wondering, what was the basis for the problems he did have with certain players?
I think we have a chapter on it called Saving Face. And I believe that if you look at the three people really that he had problems with, which was Kenny Stabler, Marcus Allen, and not a player, but John Gruden, I think the fact that they were the face of the team at that point, and basically found a way to move them out, and that's really one of maybe the more disappointing aspects of dealing with them, because these were people. Not so much Kenny was at the end, and it actually worked out well with getting with Jimmy Plunkett eventually starting. But Marcus Allen was in his prime, and there was nobody more popular than Marcus on that team, and he kind of moved him out. And then the John Gruden one just never made any sense to me, because I don't know that there was any personal issues between the two of them at all. It just made no sense. And when he asked me about, he had a chance to trade John Gruden, I was stunned. I mean, would you take these picks? I said, no, I wouldn't take them. Why not? We're going to the Super Bowl with this guy. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, he got a heck of a deal, but in the end, it didn't pay off. And I think the one object lesson I learned from this, and I think any team should learn, is consistency with your coaching staff. You look at the Steelers, they've had the same, three coaches in over 30 years. And, John Madden's there 10 years, and they win a Super Bowl, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And Tom Flores there 9 years, wins 2 Super Bowls, and should be in the Hall of Fame. And after that, we just kept jumping from coach to coach to coach until we hit Gruden. And, he was there for 4 years and could have been there for many more. So that was, that John Gruden decision to trade him, to me, is, if not the worst decision that was ever made by Al. It certainly ranks in the top 2.
You mentioned about Tom Flores. I know over the years that I've talked to him, that year that he won the Super Bowl down in New Orleans when they beat Philadelphia, he almost got fired, did he not, because the team was struggling in the middle part of the season? Al would say a lot of things, and a lot of times it was just him blowing off steam, because I heard the same thing too. And I'll give you another one that it was in the book. The same thing with Gruden. After his second year, going into the last game of the season, it was we were 7-8. We went into Kansas City, and we're down 17-0. And if the Chiefs win, they're in the playoffs. And if we beat them, they're out of the playoffs. And then Kenny Shedd blocks a punt. We end up winning the game. And I don't know if you remember the image of John running around the field after the game, just so ecstatic, winning that game. And Al always said, if he hadn't won that game, I was going to fire John. So it's possible. But I think just a lot of times Al would say things just out of, just to kind of release maybe an inner tension within him. I know in the book you talk also about some of the things that you talked to him about, and probably the biggest story was the Raiders' move from Oakland to Los Angeles. And what was sad about it is that I always felt that the players were like the Oakland area. They were blue-collar guys, and yet going down to L.A., I never felt that it was a particular fit, because L.A. being L.A. Tell me a little bit about what you witnessed and the perspective that Al had on it.
Well, I think, ironically, in the time we drafted Marcus Allen, I think one of the real issues, he said it came down, it was between Marcus and Walter Abercrombie. The room was kind of split on that. But one thing, Al, talking to Jeff Beeren, who had been at USC and was a lawyer for the Raiders at that point, asked him if he could block. He said, yes, he's the best blocker on the team. And then